Welcome to Relevance. The world's greatest podcast. Hosted by author Mike R. Akins. Where they dare to talk about topics that really matter.
Hello and welcome to the Relevance Podcast. I am your host, Mike Akins. Today's show is going to be a really great show, a very informative. There's a lot of speculation, a lot of secrecy, a lot of fear going on right now with the COVID-19 and this whole conspiracy thing that's going on with the lockdowns and the reason why we're being locked down and all of that good stuff. So, as you guys know, I always do my research, and this research is coming from an investment company that I've done business with in the past. They're very reputable, and they've gone out and they've done tons of research pinpointing key figures of our political scene that are in on this. The EndGame, they're calling it the EndGame 2020. Basically, before the end of the year, not only are we going to get another lockdown and going to have to go through the same thing that we've been going through since the first lockdown, it's going to get worse. It's going to be the second wave. I know a lot of people are already aware of that. But there were some things that were attempted while we were going through this first lockdown, while everybody was scrambling, trying to figure out if they were going to be able to keep their jobs, if they were going to be able to keep their apartments, keep their homes, keep their businesses, and stuff like that going. These people were in the background doing some House bills and some legislation that will totally take away the privacy that we have when we spend our money. So the video is actually an audio from a very reputable financial source that I've been using lately to get myself ready for what's about to happen, because the people that are caught with their pants down may not be able to recover from this. Everybody's talking about the chip being inserted, but this goes along with the chip being inserted into your fingertips so that they can control all of your finances. They can know everything that you're doing. I mean, they're doing this right now in China, okay? And they're creating this whole pandemic scare so that they can control your money. It's all about money, folks. I mean, if you follow the money trail to all of the major things that have happened in our country, in our world, it always has a money trail. It always resorts back to money, somebody making money from somebody else at the mercy of someone else. So the wealthy elite, they've already figured out what they're going to be doing 10 years, 15 years, 20 years from now, if they're still living, because this is how far ahead of the game they are when it comes to us, because we get the information from our political people who never really tell the truth. So without further ado, I am going to let you hear this recording in its entirety. It is about 45 minutes, so get comfortable, get yourself get yourself into listening mode, and get rid of any distractions that might keep you from listening to the finer points of this audio, because this is some really good stuff and you really need to pay close attention to what he's saying. Here we go.
As the mainstream press bombarded Americans with the latest pandemic updates, telling us what we could do, who we could see, and even where we could go, behind the scenes, a sinister plan emerged. Buried on page 314 of a leaked document by Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, a scheme to enact enormous change to the appearance and value of our money, and possibly the complete and total destruction of our retail banking system. A change that could impact the savings of millions of Americans, especially those with over $5,000 in the bank. But then, hours later, the plan was quickly redacted, scrubbed from existence. What was it they did not want you to see? Today, Nick Giambruno, lead investigator for Casey Research, the international research firm that accurately predicted the American housing crash, the 9/11 attack 4 years in advance, and President Trump's surprise victory, reveals the full story. Nick will explain why Nancy Pelosi's dangerous new plan is now passing through the Senate. A scheme backed by a handful of global elites, including the United Nations, the Clinton Foundation, the Federal Reserve, and the International Monetary Fund. A plan so radical, it seems hard to believe. Already, big banks like JP Morgan Chase, Citigroup, and Wells Fargo have started to implement it. And as you'll see, they have no choice in the matter. Major retailers like Starbucks, McDonald's, and Whole Foods, owned by Amazon's Jeff Bezos, are taking steps to prepare. And Visa has unveiled plans to help it all take effect within months. In today's expose, Giambruno will share exactly how you can sidestep this new financial money plan and even potentially grow your savings by 10 times or more. Most people think the solution here is going to be gold and silver, but sadly, that won't be enough. If you've got any money in a U.S. bank account or retirement plan, or if you simply collect a fixed income from the federal government, please pay close attention, because you are at risk. The entire financial system is on the verge of a shock unlike anything we've seen in decades. To most people, the world seems to be creeping back to normal. Beaches, gyms, restaurants, and offices are slowly opening up. Even schools and theme parks are coming back online. It seems like the faint heartbeat of our economy is thumping back to life, along with the stock market. But the world will soon be anything but normal. Since 1907, America has undergone 3 major financial shocks. The first led to the creation of the Federal Reserve, now considered by some to be a financial crime against the American people. The second shock snatched millions of dollars in savings under threat of prison time and enormous fines. And the last shock unleashed the disastrous money printing power of the central bank, which is now printing money $1 trillion at a time. And today, a fourth shock is upon us. Those who take the critical steps today to protect their wealth will survive and potentially even thrive. Those who don't will be decimated.
Hi, my name is Nick Giambruno. I'm the chief analyst for Casey Research, one of the most widely followed political and financial forecasters in the world. I'm coming to you today from a remote mountain bug-out location in rural Argentina. If the connection is poor, I apologize. But what I have to tell you today is so urgent, I needed to get it to you right now. Over the past 3 decades, we've been ahead of some of the most massive geopolitical shifts in history, from the fall of the Soviet Union, 9/11, to the surprising election of Donald Trump. And today, I have another massive shift to share with you. This one is not a prediction. It's playing out right now. As you'll see in the next few minutes, a new and astounding plan has been unleashed by the U.S. government with the full backing of some of the most powerful corporations in America. When this plan goes into effect, savings could be decimated, privacy will be a thing of the past, and our way of life may be altered in ways we've never seen before. If you've got any money in a bank, credit union, or in a retirement plan, If you have cash tied up in business contracts, or if you simply collect a fixed income from the federal government, please pay very close attention to what I'm about to share. At first, when you hear what's happening, you might be tempted to shrug it off, but that would be a mistake. Because, as you'll see, money as we know it could literally disappear. Today, for the first time, we're revealing the full details of what's happening and what it could mean for you in the months ahead. It all started innocently enough. It was 9:07 a.m. on a Monday morning. While most people were eating breakfast or watching yet another hysterical pandemic update on TV, a dangerous plan was hatched in our nation's capital. Then, as quick as it appeared, it vanished. What was it they didn't want you to see? Through my network of connections, I found an unredacted copy, which I'll share with you today. And when you see what's inside, it might make you furious. But at least you won't be caught off guard when events take a turn for the worse. At the core of this plan is a $1.87 trillion scheme endorsed by the likes of the Clinton Foundation, the UN, the IMF, the Federal Reserve, and even Bill Gates. In fact, this troubling new patent from Microsoft will all but make this plan an instant reality. Dozens of US corporations, banks, and powerful brokers are scrambling to prepare for what's coming next. Some, like McDonald's, Disney, Shake Shack, Starbucks, Whole Foods, Chick-fil-A, and Amazon's brick and mortar Go stores have already implemented the first step. Maybe you've already seen signs like this. Thanks to the COVID-19 panic, cash is becoming toxic. But simply saying no to cash is only the beginning. As I'll show you, major corporations from Microsoft to Visa have already introduced plans that will vaporize every last dollar. And just so you know, I'm not the only one who's caught on to the story. Billionaire Ray Dalio, one of the greatest financial minds today, recently suggested we're living through a once-in-a-100-year reshuffling of how the world works. And Bill Gates, who's playing a key role in this development, adds, when historians write the book on the COVID-19 pandemic, what we've lived through so far will probably take up only the first third or so. The bulk of the story will be what happens next. My research indicates we're about to see a huge shift in the months ahead. And if you take the right steps today, you could protect yourself and emerge on the other side wealthier than you could ever imagine. But if you don't take action, you could wake up to find your savings and retirement accounts have lost much of their value practically overnight. As you'll see, big financial shocks like this have happened 3 times before, each time with the same result. Back in 1907, for example, there was a major financial panic. That's when powerful bankers, led by J.P. Morgan, came together to quote-unquote save the financial system. The elites used the panic as a cover in order to covertly pass dangerous new legislation. And today, the law they passed cost Americans 96% of their hard-earned dollars with the stroke of a pen. I'm talking about the Federal Reserve Act. On his deathbed in 1919, President Woodrow Wilson expressed deep regret for his role in the creation of the Federal Reserve. He said, "I am a most unhappy man. I have unwittingly ruined my country. No longer a government by free opinion, no longer a government by conviction and the vote of the majority, but a government by the opinion and duress of a small group of dominant men." In 1933, a quarter century after the first shock, it happened again. The stock market plummeted 80% and unemployment soared as construction and manufacturing ground to a halt. Once again, connected insiders rode to the rescue and used the crisis to their advantage. President Roosevelt signed an order under the guise of stimulating economic growth and lifting America out of the depths of the Great Depression. It was called the Emergency Banking Act of 1933. To the average man, it was seen as salvation. Yet, overnight, FDR's plan did something radically different. It allowed the Treasury to pay for all of his pet programs, from Social Security to the Tennessee Valley Authority and the Civilian Conservation Corps, by making a massive change to the dollar. At the time, our currency was backed by gold, and coins like these were popular. But with this single act, the government forced Americans to turn in their gold savings. In fact, the Federal Reserve Bank of New York snatched more than $30 million, worth almost $600 million in today's dollars, in just one fateful day. Each 1 ounce coin was swapped for $20.67 in paper money. Failure to comply would result in a massive $10,000 fine or jail time. And once the government got the gold, it changed the price to $35 an ounce, effectively stealing 69% of American savings. Do you see a pattern here? Each time a crisis was followed by a massive change to our currency, working Americans have been hurt. When you know what to look out for, the threat becomes obvious. The last time this happened was back in the early 1970s during the Vietnam War. On Sunday, August 15, 1971, President Nixon addressed the nation in prime time with a shocking announcement. The cost of the war, along with massive welfare programs known as the Great Society, were threatening to bankrupt America. So, the president came up with a plan to change the dollar yet again. He decoupled the dollar from gold in an effort to, in Nixon's words, protect the dollar from evil speculators. If you're a student of history, you probably know Nixon's plan had the exact opposite effect. At that time, the average American had to work about 800 hours to afford a new Ford pickup. Today, the time it takes has more than doubled, and the average working hours it takes to afford a house has soared too. Meanwhile, the number of hours Americans work to pay for household debt has never been higher. Can you see why we're still feeling the effects of Nixon's financial shock? Not only did it cause the dollar to plummet, but by abandoning the gold standard, Nixon essentially gave the Federal Reserve unlimited ability to print money, causing prices to soar for almost everything you buy, from food to cars to houses. Just look at how they've expanded the supply of dollars. No wonder the spending power of a single dollar has fallen 96% over the past 100 or so years. You don't have to be a historian or advanced mathematician to understand why. It's simple supply and demand. The more of something that exists in the world, the less it's worth. Most people simply haven't noticed. We've adjusted remarkably well. In the 1970s, for example, we sent our wives to work, even those who would rather stay at home. In the 1980s and 1990s, we leveraged up with debt, borrowing our way from 1 month to the next. And today, the average loan term on a new car is 7 years, all because the value of our money has collapsed. But the devaluations we've seen so far are nothing compared to what happens next. Over the years, every last bit of value has been stripped from our money. First it was gold, then it was paper, and now it's about to disappear altogether. On the surface, this new plan is being spun as a way to protect Americans and the economy. But, as you and I both know, it will be nothing more than an elite-driven financial coup in disguise. My hope is that once you see what's at the doorstep, you'll be able to sidestep the coming financial storm, protect all the hard-earned cash you've saved up for retirement, and possibly even capture 1,000% gains or more with the strategic investments I'll tell you about in a few minutes. Before I get to that, let me introduce myself. As I mentioned, my name is Nick Giambruno. I was born in Minnesota, and I love America, but I deeply distrust its government. With its ever-expanding schemes of confiscation and surveillance, I can't think of a single good reason to trust most of the folks in charge. Which is why, a few years ago, I took a step most people might call extreme. I left and embarked on a quest to seek out and befriend some of the smartest and most connected financial thinkers in the world, like former Congressman and presidential candidate Dr. Ron Paul, legendary investor Jim Rogers, and world-renowned speculator and multi-millionaire Doug Casey, who's now become my personal mentor. If there's one thing I've learned from these guys, it's this. The world's most lucrative investment opportunities can be found in times of enormous change, like we're experiencing today. In the past decade, I've traveled to more than 60 countries, including 6 I've called home. I've met with heads of state, central bankers, even presidents and prime ministers. And I've done my best to escape the echo chamber of the American media to see what's really going on. That's how our firm has been able to predict most of the significant events in recent history. It's how we saw the 2008 housing crisis coming long before it was apparent to most Americans. How we predicted a 9/11 style attack 4 years before planes struck buildings in New York and Washington, D.C. How we accurately foretold the collapse of the Soviet Union, the Occupy Wall Street movement, the dot-com meltdown. It's also how we saw President Trump's victory coming 16 months in advance, when most people, even in the Republican Party, thought he was just a laughingstock. When you connect the invisible dots, it's much easier to see what lies ahead. Which brings me back to the critical story I'd like to share with you. Take a look at this document. What you're looking at is an early draft of the Take Responsibility for Workers and Families Act, a bill submitted by Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi in response to the coronavirus pandemic. On March 23rd, Pelosi's draft was leaked to the public, but then, in a flash, it was quickly redacted, scrubbed from existence. What was it they did not want you to see? It's right here on page 314 of the 1,119 page draft in section 101, direct stimulus payments for families. Do you see the sections I've circled? In plain black and white, Pelosi...
Okay, folks, time out. Let's take a time out. Let's take a deep breath. And let's take a station break to pay some bills. We'll be right back with the Relevance Podcast.
Please allow us to pay a few bills and take a station break as we patronize our wonderful sponsors. We'll be right back with the Relevance Podcast.
Folks, and I do want to remind you that you can support the Relevance Podcast by signing up to be a sponsor and supporting the Relevance Podcast. I do want to indicate that I'm just now uploading a lot of content, and my editing and production will get a lot better. I do appreciate you supporting me and listening to my first few episodes that I published, but I do want to let you know that those episodes will get better as we go. So if you do want to be a sponsor, it's very inexpensive. You can sign up through the link at the end of my podcast. Thank you very much again for listening, and I look forward to putting out better content in the future. Thank you.
Pelosi's plan calls for the creation of a new digital dollar along with a new digital dollar wallet. Once again, the elites are planning a huge change to the foundation of our financial system. In a minute, I'll show you why this is the biggest financial shift since Nixon de-linked the dollar from gold in 1971. But first, I want you to see for yourself the elites' playbook in action. Here, you see, in the Pelosi paper, the digital dollar was presented as a useful way for Americans to receive their coronavirus stimulus checks. Pretty sneaky, right? Now, since this was redacted, and there is no digital dollar provision in the final CARES Act, you might think this is the end of the story. However, you'd be wrong. You see, a brand new Senate bill, almost identical in nature, backed by a senator with close ties to the Clinton family, quickly resurfaced the very next day. This new bill is rippling through the highest levels of Congress right now, and if my research is correct, it could pass into law by the end of this year, so there's little time left to spare. And even if the law isn't enacted that quickly, it won't matter much, because American businesses can see the writing on the wall. They're already preparing for a cashless society themselves, right now. Folks who ignore this huge shift will regret it in the weeks to come. So, why isn't anyone talking about it? That's why I'm recording this video. There is no time left to delay. The elites have their crisis. It's full steam ahead, which brings me to our next dot. Take a look at this brand new patent filed by Microsoft I got my hands on. Patent 060606. Creepy number, right? It came out on March 26th, just 3 days after Pelosi's bill saw the light of day. This could allow the bureaucrats to roll out the digital dollar instantly, and it's downright chilling. The title says it all. Cryptocurrency system using body activity data. In short, Microsoft has invented an embedded chip that can sense a person's movement, body temperature, heart rate, eye activity, blood flow, even our brain waves, in order to track all our body's activities and transmit a digital currency wirelessly. People thought we were crazy when we wrote about the government-backed cryptocurrencies back in August 2016. When we were among the first to predict a Fed-managed Fed coin. Here's a clip to prove it.
My guess is they're going to come up with a completely digital currency called the Fed coin, which will actually act as a parallel alternative to the dollar.
Uncanny, right? But there's more. Just a few weeks ago, Visa revealed its own brand new patent on an electronic currency system that, and I quote, causes the removal of the physical currency in a fiat currency system. Let me repeat, causes the removal of physical currency. In other words, Visa's new system takes paper cash out of circulation and replaces it with a digital dollar. And if that weren't enough to raise your suspicion, take a look at what I found just a few lines down the page. The removal of physical currency from circulation includes physically destroying the physical currency. Now, you might be wondering, how are Visa and Bill Gates linked to Nancy Pelosi's new money plan? Years ago, Bill Gates pledged to give away his fortune to charitable causes, things like vaccine research, family planning, and aid for impoverished countries. But Gates has been quietly working on another project, arguably the biggest of his career, and I bet you've never heard of it. It's called the Better Than Cash Alliance. Its purpose? To accelerate the global transition from cash to digital payments. Again, it is in black and white, and the reach of this network is vast, including some of America's biggest companies like Citi, Ford, Coca-Cola, MasterCard, and you guessed it, Visa, along with powerful organizations like the Clinton Development Initiative, the United Nations, USAID, the Global Fund, UNICEF, the United Nations Population Fund. All told, the Better Than Cash Alliance includes 75 different world governments, companies, and major international organizations. Are you beginning to see how far-reaching Gates' sinister scheme is? Do you think little guys like us stand any chance in defeating this? This last dot will really drive it home for you. Take a look at this. Have you heard of ID 2020? This is a global partnership involving Gavi, a vaccine-focused alliance founded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Microsoft, and the Rockefeller Foundation. And its stated goal, which you can get right on the project's own website, is to compile e-passports, digital wallets, building access cards, debit and credit cards, banking information, transit passes, voter information, and health records, all in one place for every single person on Earth. In other words, a digital ID attached to a digital dollar. Look, the Gates Foundation sponsored an eerie virus preparedness exercise called Event 201 back in October last year. And I've seen evidence he may have negotiated a $100 billion contact tracing deal with Democrats 6 months before the pandemic. Folks have speculated about Bill Gates' possible involvement in the outbreak of COVID-19. I have no way of verifying the accuracy of those claims, But what is obvious to me and to all my colleagues at Casey Research is this. Bill Gates is using his vast wealth and power to help ban cash and implement a digital dollar as soon as possible. You may think this sounds like a nutty conspiracy theory, and I'd agree if I hadn't seen the proof myself. The entire financial system is on the verge of a shock unlike anything we've seen in decades. With each passing week, the dominoes are falling faster and faster. To recap, let's connect these dots once more. Dot number 1, Pelosi's digital cash cover-up and a new cash bill are rippling through Congress as we speak. Dot number 2, creepy patents from Bill Gates and Visa, along with the Better Than Cash Alliance, show the government has full support of America's largest businesses. Dot number 3, and to top it off, we've seen how everything is tied together by ID 2020. Friend, everything I've shown you today all leads to one inescapable conclusion. The cash in your wallet will soon be replaced by an all-digital currency, a digital dollar. And it doesn't matter that the final legislation has not been signed. As you've seen, major U.S. companies are already scrambling to prepare for this transition. McDonald's, for example, has introduced a new touchscreen system that doesn't accept cash. Starbucks has banned cash at many of its locations, and this sign was posted at Whole Foods, owned by Gates' friend and fellow billionaire Jeff Bezos. It would be easy to believe these changes are a temporary reaction to the pandemic, that things will eventually go back to normal. But this letter sent by Federal Reserve Chairman Jay Powell to several members of Congress proves otherwise. The Federal Reserve is looking into the development of a digital currency in the United States, and some of President Trump's most trusted advisors are on board too. At a recent Senate confirmation hearing, Judy Shelton, President Trump's Fed nominee, said, "We need the digital currency to help preserve the primacy of the dollar worldwide." And I could go on and on, but you get the idea. The power elites, the biggest businesses, and the most powerful organizations in America are all pushing for a digital dollar. That's why Microsoft, McDonald's, Coca-Cola, and Visa are quickly and already implementing changes. I hope by now you're beginning to see nothing can stop what's happening. It's already in motion. That's why you absolutely must prepare today, right now. As you saw, each time we've seen a big change to our currency, unwary savers have been left holding the bag, and the value of their savings plummeted. But loss of purchasing power isn't the only threat we are facing today. A new digital dollar combined with the removal of physical in-your-wallet paper money would mean the end of our financial privacy. Or worse, it could mean the end of freedom and liberty in America. My friend, former Congressman Dr. Ron Paul, explained it this way. The cashless society allows the government total knowledge of and control over the finances of every American. Think about it. Imagine if all your new digital money was stored in a Fed account, as the current Senate bill calls it, managed and tracked by decision makers at the Fed. The digital dollar would hand them total control over every part of your life. They would know every place where you spend money, everything you buy, even where you go. They could conceivably prevent you from buying sugary snacks or cans of soda if, by their standards, you're a few pounds overweight, suspend your passport and driver's license if you owe taxes, stop you from buying gas or a plane ticket if you refuse the latest vaccine or virus tracing app, or even ban you from buying guns and ammunition. But worse than that, if they deem you a threat for any of these reasons, or a new reason they make up at any time in the future, what's to stop them from locking you out of your bank and retirement accounts entirely? That's what we've seen in places like China. They call it a social credit score, and it makes George Orwell's 1984 seem like a kid's fairy tale. Just about anything will be possible with this dangerous new money. Now, like any technological change, it won't be bad for everyone. they could choose to add money to your account, like Pelosi wanted to do with the distribution of the coronavirus stimulus checks. But here's the rub. If the Fed can add money, they also have the ability to reach in and take money straight out of your account. They could subtract taxes directly from your ledger, confiscate your retirement savings in the name of fairness and equality if and when crooked politicians enact a socialist-style wealth tax, as they've been talking about. We've just added trillions in stimulus. That bill will have to come due at some point. I believe folks who are successful and either earn a lot of money or keep a lot of money in their accounts will become the Fed's #1 target. And a lot of money isn't what it used to be. I've seen recent polls that found that nearly half of Americans aren't prepared to deal with a $400 emergency. When the next major financial meltdown happens, the Fed will almost certainly deploy negative interest rates as a last-ditch effort to prop up the stock market and save the system, which could ultimately mean that instead of earning interest, you'll be forced to pay to keep your money in the bank. Even President Trump supports this tax on savings. As he stated, as long as other countries are receiving the benefits of negative rates, the U.S. should also accept the gift. I hope you're beginning to understand why. This is no ordinary disaster. The replacement of cash with a digital dollar is a disaster on a par with the creation of the Federal Reserve, Roosevelt's gold confiscation, and Nixon's dollar shock. For folks with more than $5,000 in deposits in a bank, credit union, or retirement accounts, this transformation of the American financial system will decimate their hard-earned savings. America has seen 3 major shocks to its financial system since 1907. And each time, simply owning gold and silver wasn't enough. So, what should you do? I've just released a brand new report to show you how you can protect yourself from these coming changes. If you hope to emerge from this financial shock intact, you'll need to consider buying an asset I expect will soon surpass precious metals as the hardest money the world has ever known. For thousands of years, gold and silver have been considered the world's best safe haven assets. But there's a different asset I'd like to recommend to any American who wants to protect their privacy while preserving their wealth with many of the same attributes as gold and silver without the headache and challenges of storage and transportation. It's not a commodity, paper currency, or any stock, bond, or option, and it doesn't involve gold at all, but it's simple to buy and easy to store. It's not for the faint of heart, since this corner of the market is volatile. But I consider it a near perfect asset for any American who believes in the power of gold to preserve wealth and the privacy and freedom of using cash. I'll show you everything you need to know in my brand new special report called The New Crisis Currency: Why Every American Should Own at least $100 of the hardest money the world has ever known. If you're willing to do something a bit different than what you've done before and buy even a few $100s of my favorite new crisis currency before the new digital dollar is rolled out, this asset has the potential to hand you enormous gains of 1,000% or more over the next few years. I'm convinced it will soon turn out to be one of the wisest investments you'll ever make. But you'll want to act soon. If you simply sit and wait for the announcement to be made, you won't have a chance to move any of your money, and it will be too late. So, how will this all play out for the average American? I don't have a crystal ball, but they could do any number of things, from taxing cash transactions to placing an expiration date on paper currency, beyond which it would be unusable. I believe they could even go as far as sending you a hazmat bag in the mail, something like this, and forcing you to trade in all of your paper currency in the name of public health. I get it. This scenario seems far-fetched, like some dystopian vision from the future, right? But as I mentioned before, this is not a prediction. We've connected the dots, and the wheels are already in motion. Just a few months ago, for example, Sweden's Riksbank announced the launch of the world's first central bank digital currency, the e-krona. In China, the central bank is destroying bills and racing forward with its own plan to replace cash with a digital yuan. And India Prime Minister Narendra Modi sparked mass upheaval when overnight he banned 500 and 1,000 rupee notes worth about $8.15 US. Bill Gates applauded Modi's action, saying, "I think India will go digital quite quickly. The world as a whole will go cashless." As countries around the world destroy their own cash, and Microsoft and Visa race to develop biometric and digital currency technologies, I hope it's becoming clear to you. The move to replace cash with digital currencies is imminent. And to make matters worse, the Senate bill I mentioned a few minutes ago revealed the Fed's target date for the rollout of the digital dollar, January 1st, 2021. Time is short. And again, it doesn't matter who wins the election. As you saw, even President Trump's Fed nominee backs this plan. In fact, look at what just happened a few days ago. This is stunning. U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin named Brian Brooks the next COO of the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency. Who is Brian Brooks? He was the chief legal officer at Coinbase, widely known as the blue chip of digital currency exchanges. The writing is on the wall. Cash will soon be a relic, banished to the dustbin of history, which means every detail about your financial and personal life will soon be in the hands of bureaucrats and central planners. If you're using any smartphone, Apple or Android or a personal computer, you're giving away personal financial information to the government's prying eyes every time you log on. You must take steps to protect your privacy today. To show you everything you need to do, I've put together a second special report called The Ultimate Privacy Guide, the secrets big government and big tech hope you never discover. I'll show you how to internationalize your digital life, taking your information out of the hands of the US government and big companies like Facebook and Google and basing it offshore. I'll also reveal the best way to protect your identification from being tracked and monitored, and I'll show you the 2 easiest bulletproof ways to protect your information. And finally, I'll give you a dead simple way to guarantee your digital security that works 100% of the time. Almost nobody in America takes this crucial step for privacy and security. Without these steps, the government will soon be able to track every financial transaction you make, where you make it, and what you buy. You must take steps to secure your information immediately. That's why I've put together this second special report. Given the urgency of the situation, I want to get both of these reports in the hands of as many Americans as possible, as quickly as possible, so I've arranged something special for you today. Normally, the cost to access the Casey report we storm. For almost 30 years, Doug Casey and the world-class team of researchers we've put together have warned readers about many threats to individual freedom and the American way of life. From 9/11 style attacks to the mortgage meltdown a decade ago, we've given countless Americans the courage and know-how to prepare and protect themselves through the turmoil. And, of course, prosper along the way. Just like Pitts W., who wrote, "I have never seen results like this."
As always, thanks for listening in on the show. And be sure to check out Mike's book, A Simple Guide to Child Support Redemption, available on Amazon.com, or his mobile app, Child Support Made Simple, CSMSx, available through the Google Play Store. And for the latest in current events and videos that really matter, be sure to log on to Mike's YouTube page, author Mike R. Akins, or his website at www.relevancepodcast.com.